Hello once again, I'm Don Jackson. Carl Sandburg wrote, "Out of your many faces flash memories to me, now at the day end, away from the sidewalks, where your shoe soles traveled and your voices rose and blent to form the city's afternoon roar, hindering an old silence. Passers-by, I remember lean ones among you, throats in the clutch of a hope, lips written over with strivings, mouths that kiss only for love, records of great wishes slept with, held long, and prayed and toiled for, written on your mouths and your throats. I read them when you passed by." Carl Sandburg aptly describes the word Sonder. Passers-by. We see them on the street and rarely, if ever, make eye contact. That would be too intimate. It would make someone feel uncomfortable. We want to blend into the crowd and go about our business without attracting too much attention. But if you sat at a cafe's outdoor patio table and watched this sea of humanity pass you by, how many do you think would be in the middle of a personal struggle, or had just lost a parent, or was heading for an interview for a much-needed job, or was secretly fighting a major health crisis, or had just broken up with her boyfriend, and on and on. The point being that every single person you see on the street or in a crowd is living their lives and fighting battles similar to your own. There is a word that describes this. Sonder is the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends' craziness. An epic story that continues invisibly around you, like an anthill sprawling deep underground, with elaborate passageways to thousands of other lives that you never knew existed, in which you might appear only once as an extra, sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk. Sonder, the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. It is an idea that has fascinated me for some time. You may have caught yourself watching someone who stands out in a crowd for any one of a dozen reasons. We see them almost every day, and yet we have no idea who they are. They're familiar strangers. We see them so often we become interested and feel we might like to get to know them better. Sometimes we do. Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Alice Steinbach wrote a piece that appeared in the April 18, 1993 issue of the Baltimore Sun. It really intrigued me. This is what she said, and I quote, "People, I have noticed, often do not see things clearly until they've vanished. Oh, sure, we look at the world around us, but somehow we manage not to see it until whatever it is we've become accustomed to looking at suddenly disappears. Take, for example, the neatly attired woman I used to see or look at on my way to work each morning. For 3 years, no matter what the weather, she was always waiting at the bus stop around 8 a.m. On snowy days, she wore heavy boots and a woolen scarf. Summertime brought out neat, belted cotton dresses and a straw hat worn low over her eyeglasses. Clearly a working woman, she exuded an air of competence, stability, and dependability. I remembered all this about the woman at the bus stop only after she vanished. It was then I realized how much I counted on seeing her each morning. You might say I missed her. Naturally, I had fantasies about her disappearance, accident, or something worse. Now that she was gone, I felt I had known her. I began to realize that a significant part of our daily life consists of such encounters with familiar strangers. The power walker you see every afternoon at 3 p.m. The woman who regularly walks her Yorkie at the crack of dawn. The dapper twin brothers you see at the library. The slender, attractive man at the supermarket who, rain or shine, always wears sunglasses. Such people are important markers in the landscape of our lives. They add weight to our sense of place and our sense of belonging in that place." End quote. Something experienced by Alice Steinbach that most of us can readily identify with. Billy Joel, the piano man, a familiar stranger himself. But consider all the faces he remembers sitting at the piano in the bar. This article was also condensed for the November 1993 issue of the Reader's Digest. Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Alice Steinbach goes on to write, and again I quote, "Think about it for a moment. If while walking to work, we mark where we are by passing a certain building, why should we not mark where we are when we pass a familiar though unnamed person? After all, if part of being a tourist is seeing nothing and no one familiar to you, then can we not say that seeing the familiar jogger or shopper is part of what makes us citizens of our community? It is one thing an immigrant longs for, I suppose. The shopkeeper who nods to you. The bus driver who drives you to work each day. The woman you see walking her child to school." End quote. She goes on to write, "Sometimes I wonder, am I a familiar stranger to someone? Perhaps someone who shops at my supermarket every Saturday sees me there and notes without really noting my presence. Or perhaps someone at the drugstore counter where I eat breakfast would notice if I stopped showing up." End quote. There are those who feel like they are invisible in a crowd. Some might prefer the anonymity, but others may just feel lost in a crowd. She's one of my favorite writers, a keen observer of the human condition. Alice Steinbach goes on to write, and again I quote, "Once in a while, you might actually meet one of these familiar strangers, as I did a few months ago. I was standing in a coffee shop when a woman said hello to me. 'Do you know who I am?' she asked, and I did. She was a patient I had seen many times in my doctor's office. We had an easy, familiar chat, although we never got around to exchanging names. But here's what I remember most about the importance of familiar strangers. Once, driving home from the airport after a long vacation, I was feeling disoriented, out of place. Then I saw him, the gentleman in the tweed jacket and green cap. I'd seen this man walking through my neighborhood 1,000 times. Ah, I thought, seeing the familiar stranger. I'm home, at last." End quote. Excerpts from a condensed version of an article by Alice Steinbach that originally was in the April 18th, 1993 issue of the Baltimore Sun. Ray Bradbury, from something he wrote called California, said, and I quote, "Half the fun of travel is the aesthetic of lostness. Not being able to put Piccadilly together with Regent Street to distant Charing Cross, that is deliciousness. To go down the Spanish Steps in Rome and vanish. To go out in Paris midnight crowds and wonder why you love it so, as texture after texture drifts by and you wish you could walk forever." End quote. After reading this piece by Alice Steinbach, I got to thinking about all the people I've come to know without really knowing. The woman behind the cash register of the late-night supermarket I frequent a few times every week. We always exchange a few pleasantries while I'm putting my purchases on the conveyor belt. Or the crossing guard, who I pass every day on my bike ride. We always say hello to each other, and if the light is red, we will comment on the weather. I'm sure if you think about it, you might be surprised about all the people you see every day in passing. This is something else called repeat strangers, how they enhance our lives. An excerpt from the Private Time column of the August 1987 issue of Glamour magazine, and I quote, "We all know some strangers, people we've never spoken to, but whom we see so regularly we almost feel they're friends. The man on the train platform who sometimes reads novels in French. The woman in the supermarket who invariably wears striking clothes. We see these faces so consistently, they've become living landmarks in our daily wanderings. Some of these strangers provide cues that orient us in time or space. Depending on whether or not we see the man who reads French novels on the train platform, we can judge whether we're going to be on time for work. Some strangers are fertile grounds for imagining. Is the woman wearing fabulous clothes a designer? Do these people have families? What are they like on the job? What do they do for fun? In larger towns and cities where it's often hard to feel a sense of community, having a wide circle of known-by-sight faces is our connection to our neighborhood. Because these people are so associated with a specific place, it can be either jarring or delightful to run into them out of context. A familiar face in an unexpected place can torment us as we struggle to figure out how we know someone. From the health club, the bus, television. Sometimes it's not until we see them again where they belong that we can resolve this nagging question. But seeing someone out of place can also be surprising enough to actually spark conversation. One was strolling through Florence when she recognized a man from her hometown. Both were so happy to see a familiar face that they picnicked together and made the leap from stranger to friend. This was featured in the Private Time column of the October 1993 issue of Glamour magazine, and I quote, "If you've ever stood in line at the supermarket or bank and started a conversation with someone you've never met before, you're not alone. According to psychologist Karen Shanor, PhD, it's very natural to talk to someone you're sharing an experience with, even if it's just for 2 minutes. Bending the ear of an anonymous and objective listener can also relieve stress or anxiety. Talking to a stranger about something that's bothering you helps validate your feelings, and it's safe because you'll never see that person again." End quote. And in the July 1983 issue of Glamour magazine's Private Time column was this, that goes hand in hand with what we've been sort of talking about over the course of the hour. And again, I quote, "Drop in at a sidewalk cafe and while away a breezy hour. It's one public eatery where you won't feel awkward going solo. From your front row seat, you can feel deliciously invisible as you watch the world go by. Order a tall glass of something cool and enjoy the leisurely pace. Crack open a newspaper and read it cover to cover. Scrutinize snatched sidewalk kisses. Transform the parade of passers-by into your own mini-movie. You know that pink-clad jogger is really a Soviet spy waiting for you to leave the cafe so she can nab you. Wait, could the fellow whisking by in the pinstripes be blind date in high school? Next, keep your ears pricked for titillating conversations at nearby tables. Can you keep a secret? Well, and I did call your office last night, but you weren't there. And if you spot someone you're not in the mood for, take a cue from the movies. Quickly slip on a pair of sunglasses and lift the newspaper to your face. This is no time to engage in idle small talk. You're having too much fun alone." "Blessed Be the Familiar Strangers" is the name of the article that Alice Steinbach wrote, and it got me to thinking about all the familiar strangers I've shared my days with over the years. The elegant woman who always pulled up in her chauffeur-driven Rolls every Thursday morning at the specialty store across Mountain Street from where I once worked in Montreal. She arrived at the same time and had her car come back to get her a few hours later. Then there was the man who ran the parking lot where I parked my car every day. I only knew his first name, and it was a ritual that we would discuss the night's hockey game or the weather. And the lovers I would see, who met every sunny afternoon after class under one particular tree in the park near the university. I always wondered who they were and what significance that tree had to their relationship. And the time I took the train over the course of a week saw the same people in almost the same seats coming and going. And I guess some might have wondered about me sitting there engrossed in my novel to pass the time, occasionally meeting another set of eyes when I glanced over the top of the book. Yeah, that was me, in case you were wondering. You see, there are people who are so much a part of the landscape of our lives, as writer Steinbach said, that they blend in so completely with our surroundings that we don't see them until they're no longer there. If you've ever wondered what might be going through the minds of people you see every day, maybe some of the songs played tonight will give you an idea. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.